Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg with Cloudcast Media, but ready to hear another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. More than 6 decades of doing great things for people who live in San Diego County, whether it's food insecurity, it's the homeless, Alzheimer's. They are involved in so many key causes. We are so honored to have in the studio with us today Dr. David Brenner, President and CEO of the Sanford, Burnham, Prebys Medical Discovery Institute. Good to see you, David.
Drew, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, listen, as we've talked to your colleague Scott Lafayette about, a former colleague of mine at the Union Tribune, we definitely want to have you folks on minimum once a quarter. There is so much content that you folks have coming out. You had a big anniversary that you're going to be celebrating, but yes. The public needs to hear that, so it's great. Let's go through a little bit of your background. You went to NYU like my dad did.
My dad went to NYU.
Oh, your dad went to NYU.
My dad went to. I went to Yale.
You went to Yale. Oh, okay. You're an Eli. Yes. All right, that's good. That's good. And then, where'd you get your medical degree?
So I also got my medical degree at Yale.
Okay.
And then I did a residency. And then on a dare, I moved to the National Institutes of Health and got trained in very basic biomedical research. My whole goal was to try to bring the most advanced biomedical research to understanding human diseases. So I wanted to work with the best. And then, for the first time in my life, I moved west of the Hudson River and went to UC San Diego to be a fellow in gastroenterology.
Very good. Near and dear to my heart because of my father being a gastroenterologist.
Yes.
Well, why'd you choose that field?
I chose that field because I was interested in metabolism and in liver disease. And I didn't realize that to be a specialist in liver disease, it included, as your dad would know,
right.
It included gastroenterology. So I got trained in both gastroenterology and hepatology, and then developed my own lab and joined the faculty at the UC San Diego. It was very new medical school.
Right.
It was so much fun. Everyone was so engaged. Everyone was so excited to bring new ideas to medicine. And then very early in my career, they asked me to look at chief's job, to chief of a division of gastroenterology. So I moved to Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Go Heels, right? Exactly.
Right, in the interest of complete disclosure, I should tell you.
You're a Duke fan.
I hate Duke. I hate Duke, and my children and I are rabid Carolina fans.
Okay.
And we live and die by every game, which is not a good idea.
I totally understand. I'm a UCLA the fan, so I understand how that works.
And one of my best friends, and actually a commencement speaker when I came back here, was Bill Walton.
Of course, rest his soul.
Yes.
Quite a guy. But biomed was something you were always interested in, even as a kid?
I was always interested in research.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what kind of research. I actually took a year off from college and worked on an oceanographic ship. And for a brief time, I thought I was going to be an oceanographer. I got on in St. John's, Newfoundland, and got off a year later in Dakar, Senegal.
Wow.
And I went as far north as the ice would permit. And I got terribly seasick. And then something happened. Something happened to my inner ear that I did not get seasick again. It didn't matter. The ship was rocking and rolling and people would turn green and I was fine.
You're a biomed guy. What would cause that?
There's some adaptation to your balance and people have described it. And then now I lost it completely. I get sick on the Staten Island ferry.
Okay, so it was just temporary.
It was for 1 year though. I was at one with the sea. Anyway, so I knew I wanted to do research.
Right.
I wasn't clear what. I had an early experience studying what we call metabolism, the way the body handles nutrients and the way the body detoxifies things. And I said, that's really interesting. And the main organ for detoxification and for metabolism is the liver. So that's how I got involved in the liver. And then I finished my clinical training here, right in San Diego. And then I went to be chief of gastroenterology at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And then I was asked to look at the next level in academia is to be chair.
Right.
So I was chair of medicine at Columbia University, where if you're very perceptive, you realize I have a New York accent.
I do know that.
You picked that up immediately.
You grew up in Queens.
I grew up in Queens.
Right.
And then in 2007, they said if I behaved, I could come back to be vice chancellor and dean at UC San Diego, where I was for 16 years.
So you did behave.
Well, it was 16 years,
Okay.
as long as I could last.
Right. That's fantastic. So before we talk a little bit about, the current state and challenges in biomed research, talk about Sanford, Burnham Prebys, the institute. How long has it been in business? What exactly is the mission?
Thank you. This is so important. So Sanford Brenner Prebys is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yes. So that is quite an accomplishment for an independent research institute. It was founded 50 years ago by some oncologists from Boston who did not like the way people were doing research in cancer. They thought there was a better way. They thought it could be more collaborative. They thought they could ask harder questions. They didn't want to be dictated by year-to-year funding. They wanted to develop a coherent group of people who are going to work together, who are going to collaborate, and going to ask really hard questions. And it worked. It worked. So over 50 years, it's had this amazing history of accomplishments, of scientific breakthroughs, of prizes, of great researchers, and of what I'm most proud of its interaction with its colleagues throughout San Diego. San Diego, I don't know why, is the most collaborative collegial place to do biomedical research. And I've been many places. I told you, I've been to Yale, I've been to New York, I've been to Chapel Hill. Nowhere is there anything like San Diego in research.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting about that. We're chatting with Dr. David Brenner, who's the president and CEO of the Sanford Burnham Prebys Medical Discovery Institute, going to be celebrating its 50 years anniversary coming up. I'm Drew Schlosberg with Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. So there's one more thing that San Diego is known for collaboration. Biomed research, okay? Education. When we talk to as I mentioned to you earlier, David, we do a show called Future Pathways Superintendents Unplugged. We get to interview the 43 superintendents throughout the county. And we say this all the time, is that it's not the case in other counties, whether it's Orange County, LA County, pick a county. These guys get along. Yeah. And, listen, I'm sure they have some, flare-ups here and there, but it is the most amazing collaborative thing. As you know, education is quite volatile these days, and so is biomed research, which we'll talk about in a while. That's terrific to hear that aspect of it. And when we chat with groups like Cure Brown, who's a frequent guest on the show, and they talk about, working with different organizations, they talk about this collaboration. Is it because it's so competitive, biomed research? Is that why it's hard to collaborate, or is there other reasons?
So why can't other people do what we do?
Correct.
I think it's competitive. I also think it's hardwired into academic biomedical research that the way people get promoted from assistant professor to associate professor, they have to produce a body of work.
Right.
And that body of work, up until now, was very siloed. They did not want you collaborating with other people. They actually, this is going to sound funny, but they actually did not want other senior people on your manuscripts, on your publications, because in a way it would contaminate them. They wanted to show that you could do your own work by yourself. That's probably based on 19th century universities. That doesn't work anymore, but it's a vestige of that old approach. So I think now the future is all in team science. The future is all in collaborations, on asking really hard questions and putting together groups of people who want to work together. But the reason why it's so siloed is because of this old system.
Yeah. Listen, unless you're living in even the space station Mir, people would understand this as well. Maybe it's some other solar system. That certainly research is maybe under attack is too dramatic and on this aspect of it, even though it is in this area. There's some challenges with getting. We know that research is so critical. Okay, preaching to the congregation on this aspect of it, but it's not inexpensive. However. the results, when you find something that's going to support Alzheimer's research that may tie into some other neurodiversity that leads to X, Y, and Z, is so important. Is that part of the challenges of biomed research, or just research in general, some of the funding?
Biomedical research has gotten very expensive, and therefore it requires a lot of support.
Right.
And up until very recently, we dominated biomedical research. I have postdoctoral fellows who are alumni of my laboratory from all over the world because they knew the best research was being done here.
Right.
And if they wanted to do this, they needed to be trained here. And for various reasons, some of which you clearly articulated,
right.
there's been a step back from that.
Right. How do we get back to where we need to be?
It's a tough question. I tend to be an optimist.
Yes.
And I think that most people, no matter what their political party or political interests are, really like the idea that the U.S. does great biomedical research. It's one of the few areas I think that most people agree on. And I think this distrust of science is a challenge to us. And that's part of my job, is to do outreach and explain to people what we're doing in clear ways, and also to challenge when someone says something that's completely incorrect. Just because you repeat it a lot, it's still incorrect.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, and we've been talking to other groups that are in science and all this, and my head spins around just because of how I grew up,
Yes.
with a father that obviously UCLA is a big medical research, to say the least, and we all know what that stuff does, and we talk about this, and science should not be political. It's not political. It should be totally apolitical, and it is apolitical. That's how you guys look at it as well. We're out there to try to do good things for humankind that are going to save different types of diseases we don't even know are going to be popping up in that aspect of it. So I'm really glad to hear you say that, and we're pretty bullish on it, at least on my show, is, listen, conversations are great, and if people want to refute certain things, knock yourself out, and that's good. But when you disparage science, okay, that is just not going to fly. And we need to have everybody, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, what you look like and all that, we know what this stuff does. It's phenomenal in that area. So would you say, that, the groups that you work with, okay, so you're getting the best of the best in this area. How closely do you work with the universities?
Of all the places I've been, as I mentioned, this is the most collaborative. Some of it is hardwired, and some of it is person to person. For example, I am a professor emeritus at UC San Diego.
Right.
I am also an adjunct professor at Salk. I also am on the board of Radiogenomic Institute, and I also have very tight collaborations with La Jolla Institute of Immunology. So I'm an example of, just me personally, of someone that is so benefiting by the collaborations and by, I don't think that's what ever happened. I joke that when I was chairman of medicine at Columbia University, I never went to Mount Sinai or Cornell or NYU. In fact, I think that if I ever went there, they'd call security. They wouldn't know what to do with me. I go to all the seminars at Salk and UCSD and La Jolla Institute. Yesterday, the CEO of La Jolla Institute, Erica Sapphire, gave a talk at Sanford, Burnham, Prebys, and she brought down the house. It was tremendous. And it is so much fun to have amazing colleagues from different institutes that will walk across the street and interact. And it's not just lectures. It's I think most of the grants from the NIH have multiple institutes on the grants. I think most of the publications in the major journals have multiple institutes from San Diego. And I don't know, some people say it's just the nice weather that we can walk across the street. I think it's more than that.
No, it's a collaboration.
But why is there such great collaboration? I mean, I think Jonas Salk said it by building the institute so close to university. And then I think they set a good precedent that we're all going to collaborate.
It's a mentality,
yeah.
And if you don't have that mentality, then there's some challenges. That we come back from break, David, and want to talk a little about how Sanford Burnham Prebys is adapting into this aspect of it. I don't know if I've done a show recently where we don't talk about AI, and so I'm glad we're going to be mentioning that as well. And we always save time in the second half of our Spotlight show, David, to say, well, what can our audience do to support what your folks are doing? Be advocates, do whatever the case may be thinking about that when we return with Dr. David Brenner. He's the president and CEO of Sanford, Burnham, Prebys Medical Discovery Institute. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast. Now in our 20th year, brought to you by the fine folks of Mission Fed Credit Union. We'll be right back after this short break.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. So honored to have in the studio for the first. There are going to be many interviews with this wonderful group, the Sanford, Burnham, Prebys Medical Discovery Institute. Dr. David Brenner, President and CEO, talking about celebrating the 50th year anniversary, and what they do. Collaboration is game one for them and job one. They've been doing this for quite a while, and probably at the top of their game in that aspect of it, and great models for that. How are you adapting to the climate we have now? And adapting is not good enough for you guys. How do you thrive in this?
Yes, thank you. So there's I remember the Tale of Two Cities.
Yes.
It was the best of times, was the worst of times.
Of course.
I think that fits us now. It's the best of time for reasons that you alluded to, that never has been more exciting to do biomedical research. And it's for two big reasons. One is that we're able to generate these enormous data sets that next generation sequencing, including major companies in San Diego that are supporting that, allow you to generate bigger data sets, terabytes of data for the first time. The second is we have artificial intelligence to interpret them. No human could interpret these big data sets if it was not for artificial intelligence. Every month, artificial intelligence improves and allows us to do more as biomedical researchers. That's the best of times. The worst of times is this incredible stress of getting support and the concern that the NIH, that has been such a great partner since World War II. I actually did my postdoctoral training at the NIH. I'm an alumnus.
Right.
But it was the beacon of where you do research, not political. Everyone's invited. People from all over the world come to the NIH to get trained. It was the best place to train in the world. And now it's not a reliable partner. We do not know what support we're going to get year to year. Everything is slower. Grants that were funded in the past are no longer funded. Areas that are very important have been deprioritized. And it's very hard for me as the president and CEO to plan long term. So we have the best of time and we have the worst of time. And what I'm trying very hard to do, and why I so appreciate this opportunity to be on your show, is try to explain to people what the situation is and how they can help us. And we our obligation is to diversify our portfolio and look for other means of support, one of which is the incredible philanthropic support we and other ones of our colleagues across the Mesa, Torrey Pines Mesa, have received. You would not believe how philanthropy and the investment in biomedical research has been transformed in San Diego in the last 20 years.
Well, listen, and anybody who spent any time in San Diego knows the name Denny Sanford, and he's actually contributed a lot to an organization I work very, very closely, National University. In fact, I'll be doing their hosting at their commencement over the next 2 days, as a live stream.
Yes.
And Denny's actually been on the show here talking about all the great stuff that he's done. We're working with Michael Cunningham, the then Chancellor.
I saw Michael Cunningham yesterday.
Michael's great.
He's fantastic.
Michael's wonderful. He's not going to mind me saying this either over here. So here's Michael, and 1.5-year-old, is that right? I think
exactly.
Exactly.
She's gorgeous.
Exactly. And Michael, again, really a trailblazer when it comes to education, to say the least. And they have one also now, and Dr. Mark Milliron as well in this area. But getting back to Denny, if people don't think your money supports things, listen, go talk to our good friend over here, David Brenner, and what it can do and transform. We need, especially when it comes from philanthropy and people that understand how critical this area is. But for the layperson who should understand, this is why it's important to support, Sanford, Burnham, Prebys, and everything else you work with. What do you say? What are the talking points?
Yeah. To me, the most important thing, and we do a lot of community outreach, is that I want the community to understand what we do, and I want them to champion us. That's it. I don't know what your capacity is to support us, financially. I just want people to understand what a great institute it is, how much fun we have, how we interact with our colleagues, how we advance research. And our mission is we want to translate research into improving health. That's all. We want to take the science, no matter where it comes from, and push it further, closer to developing cures and developing diagnostics. So I want people to be proud of Sanford, Burnham, Prebys when they live in San Diego. I want to say, we have such amazing people here. We do such amazing things that this is one of the great things, one of the gems of our city, and that we take pride in it, and we have opportunities to tell other people. We tell them.
Well, listen, and we all know this, and your colleague Scott LaFay knows this, is that when you get the information out to folks, and they can really actually, how can I relate to Sanford, Burnham, Prebys? These guys are in some outer space. Well, they're not in outer space; they're in your space, okay? And we all need to be looking at this stuff. Whether I'm have a little bit of an advantage because of my background with my father and all that, but it doesn't make a difference. And I think as you have people that are going to support this aspect, you cannot talk about this enough in this area. How well do you work with our local politicians, whether they're their congressmen and women, their state assembly, or local in this area?
Well, first of all, we welcome everyone to come onto the campus.
Right.
We recently had Scott Peters, our congressman on the campus.
Love Scott.
And it was so much fun. He filled the room. Everyone wanted to talk to him, and he knew so much about what we're doing, and the staff knew so much.
He's an environmental guy. He knows science.
It's important.
Yeah.
So we invite everyone, and not only the representatives, but we also invite their staff, because we want them to understand the details. There's so many things going on now. About issues about how we get support, about how they support the infrastructure, which we call indirect costs, that is not understood. So I personally spend hours on the phone just taking people through the steps so they understand how their tax dollars are being spent when the NIH gives us a grant.
Right. Now, do you guys go out in the public and do it? Do you offer forums? You offer workshops when appropriate, of course?
We try to do all the above. We try to have all of our seminars are open to the public, but some of them are not aimed for the public.
Right.
So we get that, and therefore we do seminars that are exclusively aimed for the public, where we practice our scientists, we make sure they understand who their audience is, and that they educate them. And I am so impressed that we fill our biggest auditorium with community members when there's an interesting topic about healthy aging, about heart disease, about the topic you raised, Alzheimer's, which I think is going to be the biggest area of research for the next 20 years. People want to know. This is a really fun community, and they really enjoy taking advantage of the different institutes and learning what their scientists are doing.
Well, listen, two of our favorite topics we just had on the San Diego Senior Center's the foundation. Bob Kelly, who a long-time San Diego Foundation CEO, started that as well, and his son Christopher's involved in that area. And, of course, now Paul Downey is involved in it. He used to be the longtime CEO of Serving Seniors. And Alzheimer's is a frequent guest on the show. And, you know, it amazes me, and we always ask our young folks that are in the studio today, they produce the show, is that you're going to be there one of these days, okay? And it's going to have an impact on you, if not already, if you're caretaking, you know, an aunt, an uncle, a father, or whatever. So it's incumbent upon everyone. It's going to happen, and this is what is happening on it. So it's so critical when you bring it down to those terms. Talk about that.
So, I mean, particularly about Alzheimer's,
yes.
I think it's going to be the most exciting area of biomedical research in the next 20 years. The reason the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine was formed 20 years ago, CIRM, was really aimed at we are making no progress in neurodegenerative diseases, and that maybe small molecules are not going to be the answer. Maybe you need cell therapies. So the idea behind cell therapies was that you would take embryonic stem cells, or now these inducible stem cells, convert them to neurons, and actually transplant them to improve cognition. And the closest we are to that is in Parkinson's disease. People have made neurons that secrete dopamine, and they're able to function. And in animal models, they work. And there are 5 clinical trials now funded by CIRM in California to transplant nerves into patients with Parkinson's. And there's some very preliminary good results in improved motion. So to me, that's like science fiction when I was a medical student. It is so exciting to think about that. So I would like you not only to provide good care to your aunts and uncles, but I would also like you to be engaged in actually curing the diseases.
Well, and we all need to do this. We need to row in the same direction, heaven forbid, when we all do this. David Brenner, we're just getting started with Sanford, Burnham Prebys Medical Discovery Institute. I'm looking forward to the next time you'll be on. Different topic, obviously, give a little recap what you're doing, and continue this momentum. We've got to talk about it all the time, get it in front of people's faces. Any final comments?
I just want to add one thing, because you mentioned education.
Please.
We have an accredited graduate school, which most people do not know. We take between 10 and 14 new students every year to get a PhD. And why do we do this? We thought we could train people to get PhDs to be leaders in biomedical research in San Diego and beyond. And we thought that we could offer more practical training. And secondly, we would like to be the place that's welcoming to local students. I personally went to San Diego State. I personally went to Cal State San Marcos and talked to the presidents and explained, if you have outstanding students that have not had the experience because they've not been able to work in wet labs and advance their careers, I want them to know Sanford, Burnham, Prebys is welcoming to them. They could live at home, they could work in labs, they could get a PhD degree, and they could become the new leaders of biomedical research. So for me, that's one of the real gems of our institute. So, and maybe that'll be part of the next topic, is bringing in some of those folks that have gone to that program. And as we build upon all of this, and have you on, just incessantly, well, listen, it's important to talk about this. There's so many wonderful organizations, yours being one of them. The woman that just walked in the door, we love having the San Diego Humane Society on. You're talking about this. We're a little unabashed when we say this is probably the number one city in the country where there's the human-animal, connection is not better than that. And of course, we need to do that with Sanford and Burnham Prebys Medical Discovery Institute. An honor to have you on the show, David. We're just getting started with this, and we appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, you bet. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast in our 20th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, 60 years of doing great things for people in San Diego County. And to our audience, we hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.